This is Floss Weekly. I'm Doc Searles. This week, Sean Powers and I talk with William Guo of Apache SeaTunnel. Apache SeaTunnel is a way to make all your databases, your multiple databases, work together in a synchronized way, and has many more implications than I ever thought possible, or Sean ever thought possible. And it turned into a very exciting show, and that is coming up next.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Floss Weekly, episode 743, recorded Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023. Data is surprisingly exciting.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club Twit. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club Twit Discord, a great clubhouse for Twit listeners. And finally, the Twit Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.
Hello again, everyone, everywhere. This is Floss Weekly. I am Doc Searles. And this week, joined by Sean Powers himself.
Hey!
And there he is. We're actually relatively close. We're one state apart. We're in adjacent states. I'm in Indiana. You're in Michigan. And you're in green and I'm in orange, for those of you not watching.
Is that orange or is that red? It looks red to me.
It's orange. It's actually orange. It's a Firefox shirt that
we appear
with an older Firefox logo, one of several older Firefox logos.
All right. Maybe it's the contrast with the fox. It makes it look red.
It could be. Well, I think every screen is wrong also, so that may be another thing. There are ways of calibrating them, I paid extra for one that said it was pre-calibrated, but I don't know. It doesn't look that orange on there either to me. I look at the shirt and I look at the screens. I don't know. So our guest today is William Guo from Apache's SeaTunnel project, which I have compiled a whole lot of stuff on and don't understand well enough yet. So have you done your homework on this thing?
I mean, so yes and no. Big data is big, right? I mean, there's a lot to figure out there. I have questions in my youth. I don't know. In my yesteryear.
You're still in it. Trust me.
Okay. All right. Well, I was a database manager at a university, and we had this incredibly archaic database that we had to tie in with another more modern SQL database. And basically all my questions are going to be based around, would this have made my job easier back in the day? And I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but that's the extent of my knowledge of big data, is that it's a big pain in the butt. So hopefully this makes it less painful.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by some of the claims that I saw, or some of the stories I saw about it, saying that it's actually cheap to run and you can use it on smaller projects. I'm very interested in using it personally. So that's an interesting thing. So we could go in lots of different directions with this. So let me introduce our guest. It's
all right.
It's William Guo. I'm hoping I get the pronunciation right. He's been an Apache Software Foundation member, a mentor with the Apache SeaTunnel project, Apache Dolphin Scheduler, PMC member. That's a Dolphin Scheduler is another topic of conversation today. The initiator of the ClickHouse Chinese community. He is a graduate of the Peking University. Used to work as a big data director for Lenovo Research Institute and general manager of the Wanda e-commerce data department. And he's a visiting researcher at the Big Data Business Analysis Research Center of Renmin University, and has been committed to promoting the democratization of data capabilities and the development of open source projects globally. And so with that as an inadequate introduction,
you should do like 12 truths and a lie. And he has 27 toes on one foot.
Hey, could be. So welcome, William.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, hello. Glad to see you all.
Yeah,
I'm William.
So tell us a bit about Apache SeaTunnel and what led to it, because I'm reading it. Dolphin Scheduler is part of it. So give us kind of the overall thing, and we'll dive down into parts of it.
Okay. So Apache SeaTunnel, it's a project that you can do a big data integration. And actually, we can extract data from a different database, such as MySQL, Oracle, or DB2, or AWS, Aurora, or even some SaaS or CloudDB. And then you can load the data into another database, such as a Hive, Hadoop, or Redshift, or ClickHouse, or any database you wanted. So I think it's a very, very good open source project that can help you to extract data from your database to the other database. So that's as Apache SeaTunnel projects.
So I'm not a database expert at all, but I do know that companies have always had a hard time integrating these things because there are many different fields, many different variables, many different conventions involved in them, many different ways of querying them. And I wonder how you pull all of those together and don't have a monster of some sort that is too hard to get into. And I don't know. I mean, how does that look when you're done with it and you're ready to query it?
Actually, I met a problem before because I just want to synchronize data from AWS Aurora to AWS Redshift, and I used to use a tool called AWS DMS. That's a tool that AWS offered to me, but I think it's not workable on that time. And also, I found that there's many databases, not only AWS Aurora, but also we have MongoDB, have Neo4j. That's another kind of database. And also, we have many data warehouse, such as Snowflake, as you know, and also like Redshift, and Teradata, and also Oracle. So there's so many databases. And what I just want to do is just synchronize data from one database to the other. And I cannot find a very good tool to do that. So we have to build a synchronized tool that we call WaterJob. That's a former SeaTunnel projects. And then we found that everyone needs a tool that synchronize data from different data sources. Perhaps there's a Kafka, or perhaps there's a MongoDB, and perhaps it's MySQL. So then we create an open source project called SeaTunnel that let you to synchronize data very easily. Even you can use drag and drop. Drag and drop, I think, visualization tools, and to do the synchronization. So that's why we create this SeaTunnel. So I think it's easy for people who are not technical background, but you want to synchronize data from one database to the other. Even you can synchronize data from, for example, from Notion to Google Doc, if you want. So that's a different data sources. So SeaTunnel will help you to do the synchronization from any data source to the other data source.
So, okay. And this is, again, I wish that I would have known you 10 years ago because we could have solved some major problems for my job. But when you talk about synchronizing two different database types, is it only a one-way synchronization? And if so, does that just mean you set up like two synchronizations, one each way? Like, let's say I have a SQL database and I want to sync it to Fox Pro. Again, databases aren't what I do right now, but you want any changes on the other side to also be reflected. You just want to keep them in sync with each other. Is that like a one process thing, or do you have to set up two jobs and like whichever happens first, and they just, you know what I mean? Is it two-way or is it two one-ways? I guess is the short.
Yeah, very good question. For now, it's one-way synchronization, but for synchronization, we have two kinds of synchronization. One kind, we call it batch job. That means you extract data and load data for one time. And the other we call it real-time synchronization. That means you just can read the data from MySQL, for example, and we call it CDC. That's change data capture, and then you can load the data to AWS Redshift or Snowflake in real time. So this is another type of data synchronization. So this is the one-way synchronization, but we can do it in real time now. It's not only for the batch time, for the batch synchronization. So I think that's why many users of SeaTunnel use Apache SeaTunnel to do the synchronization. Yeah, so it's a very good question. And now we didn't have a Focus Pro connector, but I think now people use a Snowflake, Snowflake, and then you can use SeaTunnel to extract data from Notion or Google Doc or Excel and load them into a Snowflake very easily.
Okay. So it's basically they're one way, but you can set up multiples. Is that a fair answer to that question?
Yes.
Then? Okay.
Yeah, you can have multiple one. Yeah.
Okay. And then in the back, Jonathan and Bennett and I were both thinking the same sort of thing. When there are conflicts with that sort of like if there's synchronizations, two separate ones, passing in the night, how do you deal with conflicts? Is it timestamp based or how do those conflicts get handled?
Yeah, it's a very good question. That sometimes we just want to load the data to the target database, but there is some database data already. So we have a mode called a save mode, and you can choose that you replace the record, or you just update the record, or you just delete the record. So you will have some we call the save mode to handle the issue that you met. So I think it's very easy for you to choose that kind of mode. So I think that's your answer. That's my answer.
Okay, I guess that makes sense, and probably it depends on the use case, like how if changes are made on both databases, and the hope is to get the data current in both. I assume timestamps must be at play. Like, okay, which gets the preference for being stored. I have, Doc, do you have anything? I have so many questions, but I don't want to dominate all the.
No, those are all good. What I'm not clear on, again, I'm not a database person, is what is the user looking at? If you're used to your Oracle database, your Mongo, or your MySQL, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the one your company normally uses for something, or are you looking at some other user interface that's unique to SeaTunnel?
Yeah, for users of SeaTunnel, I think it's a data engineer. So who want to handle the data, and because in old days they have to write a lot of codes to handle the data synchronization, because there's no very good tools like SeaTunnel to do the synchronization between different databases. Now they just drag and drop, or they can just write a SQL-like code to do the synchronization with Apache SeaTunnel. So I think Apache SeaTunnel is for data engineer, especially for the big data engineer, I think.
Okay, so you mentioned engineers are the ones kind of doing this integration, and also I noticed in the background information that there's this field called data integration. That's what this is in, and it's a new field. And who all is in that, and where does Apache SeaTunnel fit into that?
Yeah, actually, we call that ETL. That means extract, transform, and load. In old days, I think we call it a data warehouse period. So we just extract data from Oracle, from DB2, and then load them into Teradata or DB2 data warehouse edition. But nowadays, we do in different ways. We just do the data capture in real time, and we load them into Snowflake in real time, and we do data analytics in real time. And now we found another very interesting story that many people use, many developers try to use SeaTunnel to synchronize data from SAS or from database and to the target we call it ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is very hot, and ChatGPT only knows the knowledge from the internet, but ChatGPT cannot chat with you with your data because ChatGPT do not know your data, or ChatGPT cannot know your data in your database. But SeaTunnel can extract data from more than 100 data sources, and we have a connector. People just developing a connector for ChatGPT. When they finish, I think ChatGPT can just have a connector to your database, and then ChatGPT can chat with you and with your data, no matter the data is on your Google Doc or Notion or in your Oracle or in your MySQL or MongoDB. So it's a very interesting idea. Yeah.
So, okay. All these, the connector idea is really cool, but so part of the idea of a connector, and there's like the source and then the sink, like, right? The source is where the data is coming from. The sink is where the data ends up. How much transformation can take place in that interim step? And I realize this is mostly, stream or real time kind of thing. And obviously there has to be some translation because these are different data structures and stuff, but can other transforms happen? I mean, can you do stuff to make the data, not just the different format, but actually have some transforms take place in the interim? And I have a follow-up question because I think I know the answer there. But can stuff be done in the interim or not really? Or is it just a structure change?
So we can do some transform between the source and the sink. And first, because different database will have a different data type, and SeaTunnel engine will transform the source data type into the sink data type automatically. So you needn't to do the transformation about the data type. But if you have another requirement about I want to change from 0 to male and 1 to female, and you can use a transformer in SeaTunnel to do such of things. Actually, you can use a SQL-like code to do the transform in SeaTunnel engine.
Oh, that was the exact answer to my question then. So yeah, you can do transforms, and you thought of a much better example. I couldn't think of an example off the top of my head. So yeah, that's perfect. My follow-up question then leads right up to that. This is something that the SeaTunnel engine does, but I noticed that SeaTunnel as the entire project can use the newer SeaTunnel engine, but can also use Flink or it could use Spark. What are Flink and Spark already have like people who are like, why would I ever use this over that? Why would I ever want to switch to, Flink? Spark is everything I want. What does SeaTunnel add to that argument that makes it a better fit for this? And if it's so much better, why are there options still to use Spark and or Flink?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. Because actually, at the first, SeaTunnel support Flink and Spark engine, but we found that Spark and Flink is designed for, we call it computation. It's not designed for the synchronization. For example, in our use case, our users will have more than 1,000 tables, and they want to synchronize the 1,000 table to the other database. But if you use Spark or Flink, there will be a lot of, we call the JDBC connections to handle with that. But actually, that's a very heavy load for the source database. So SeaTunnel can, we created, we call a connection pool that you can reuse the JDBC connections, something like that. And also, there's another feature we call the schema evolution. That's a technical word. What does that mean? That means if you change the data model from your source table, and we want the same thing exactly happen to the target table, we call it the think table. So Flink and Spark is not designed for that, because Spark and Flink is designed for the computation, for the group join, for the aggregation, and for that. So we have to design another synchronization engine. We call it Zeta, SeaTunnel Zeta, to do this kind of things. And SeaTunnel, this project is only designed for the synchronization. So the performance will be better because we do not care about computation or some complex functions. So the performance will be better than Flink and Spark on synchronization user scenario. So that's why we have to use SeaTunnel.
Okay, good. So my guess was the implementation or the ability to use Flink and or Spark, was that just because there wasn't a highly developed SeaTunnel engine yet? They seemed an odd fit for for what SeaTunnel was designed for. I'm like, okay, cool. And then when I saw that you could use Flink or Spark, I was a little confused. Like, but that's not really what those do. That's more like data extraction for like running real time whatever. I was a little surprised. So ideally, the SeaTunnel engine itself is the better use case. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And and also Spark and Flink, they do not have many source and sync connectors. So
yeah, I didn't realize that they did a sync at all. I mean, I thought it was like an extraction for their own. I didn't. Yeah, so that makes sense. And so the source and the sync, I don't know if they're plugins. I don't know the terminology. But are those designed engine specific? So like there are SeaTunnel engine source and sync like code, but then if you want to use Spark or Flink, you have to use something specifically designed for those engines. Is that so? The bulk of development is towards the SeaTunnel engine.
Actually, SeaTunnel engine, we call it SeaTunnel connectors. Sometimes we adopt a Spark and a Flink because somebody use Spark and a Flink. But if you use Spark and a Flink, you will not have the features such as schema evolution or like a better performance or like some features. So actually, SeaTunnel support Flink and Spark, but also if you want to use a better performance and a better functions, you can use the SeaTunnel engine itself. So SeaTunnel engine will help you to do more. It will offer you more functions.
Okay. I'm sorry. This is just an add-on that I, for some reason, popped into my head that I forgot to ask earlier. Can the flow, whatever the connection from one database to another, can it be one to many? Or is that another thing where you set up just another connection? Like say we have our, SQL database and I want it, sent to use your examples. Like I want, tables put into Google Docs, and I also want to set up to my Notion, personal database. Is it one to many, or is it just, do I set up two different connections?
Yeah, you can use one to many. We call it load once and sync many times. So nice. You load from a Google Doc or Kafka, then you can sync them into Snowflake and into Redshift and into S3 on AWS. So that's a feature of SeaTunnel.
So you don't have to do three queries. You can, or whatever the terminology would be. You don't have to pull the data three times. Okay, that's really nice.
Yes. Yeah. So it's very interesting because I think at the first time I think synchronization is a very easy thing. But when we create a Apache SeaTunnel, we found that there's a lot of user scenario, and that's quite different from a Flink and a Spark, because synchronization is another kind of user story, I think.
Yeah, I never thought about Spark and Flink as like cramming data back into a database. So that was, again, that's why I didn't understand how they were engines in the same way that the SeaTunnel engine would have been. So yeah, thank you for the clarification there, because I feel the SeaTunnel engine is definitely I almost say Sea Turtle every time. I don't know why, but the SeaTunnel engine is definitely the next one, the most efficient way to go. So thank you.
I think that's the next project.
Sea Turtle.
So, the Sea Turtle goes through the tunnel when he needs to. I'm wondering, because I'm quick reading about Spark and Flink, because again, I'm new to this stuff, and I see in a piece about Spark and Flink, those are also Apache projects, earlier Apache projects, I guess. And those are called third and fourth generation data processing frameworks. Does that make SeaTunnel fifth generation? I'm not sure, or something, or a different species altogether.
I think I don't think it's a fifth generation, because I think a fifth generation will be another story. For example, a quant computation, perhaps that's a fifth generation. But for Spark and Flink, I think because they are focusing on computation, just like you said, it's data processing. And the data processing is quite different from a data synchronization. So actually, I think our projects is in different ways from Spark and Flink. Although we can compute something.
So I'm wondering if, this may be a self-answered question, given what you just said, that one is focused on processing, the other on synchronization. Do any of the same people that worked on Spark and Flink also work on SeaTunnel, or is it a different set of experts and forms of expertise? I guess a related question is where are you getting your developers, and what are the developers working on? What did it come out of? I know that the dolphin thing was involved as part of it, so that may be a way to transfer into that question as well.
Actually, I think for the developers, we call the contributors of open source project. Some of Flink and Spark contributors are in Apache SeaTunnel and contribute code because they need SeaTunnel to synchronize data from a data source to the target database, and then they will use Flink or Spark to do the data processing. So actually, in our users, actually our users are using both SeaTunnel and Flink or Spark to do the data synchronization and the data processing. Because when you do the data processing, you have to store the data in one database. So you have to extract data from a different database and load them into that one database, such as a Snowflake or a Delta Lake for the Databricks. So that's what SeaTunnel doing. And when they load the data into the one database, they can use a Spark to do the computation, or to use the Flink to do the real-time processing. So actually, we are not competitors. we are something they are after our projects.
So speaking of developers, again, I keep thinking about myself because that's apparently how I think. But the database that I had to struggle with when I was the manager of a database department was, I'll call them out. It was this software that was developed by Datatel, and the program was called Colleague. It was bought by Lucian, but nonetheless, this database, which was designed in the 80s, had a really, really weird, non-compatible with anything SQL. It had like multi-value fields. It was just a weird database. Okay. And so there was this ridiculously complicated spaghetti of a database interaction that was just custom designed because something like SeaTunnel didn't exist. My question is, if I were to tackle this today, are the connectors, I think that's the proper term, are the connectors modular? Is that something that somebody could develop their own connector to a database and use that with SeaTunnel, or is it not modular where a person could develop something for their own ridiculous backend database that they want to, synchronize with a more modern version? We literally had to run it in this like old VM. It was like Star Trek, Star Trek 1 with like Voyager is like in the middle of this enormous alien like monstrosity. That's basically what this database thing was, like a tiny VM with this old database. And we had to figure out a way to connect to it. It was miserable. So is it modular to connect to things like that?
Actually, everyone can contribute connector to SeaTunnel. And actually, we have a very good example. There is a database called Infomix. It's a very old database. I think that database age is older than I think. So many people want to. Some people use that old database, and they want to synchronize the data from this old database and to Oracle actually, and then they can use Oracle instead of Infomix. So SeaTunnel can do this kind of things, and someone develop a connector for the Infomix and let people can do the real-time synchronization from Infomix to Oracle. Then the application based on the Infomix, they can change the application. They design another application based on Oracle. Then they can transfer from Infomix to Oracle. So I think that's an example for your question. Everyone can contribute a connector to SeaTunnel, and then because it's open source projects, and then everyone else who will have the same issue can use this connector to solve the problem we met. So everyone can solve that kind of a problem.
Okay. That's awesome. And then in your example though, like, so there's this older database that some applications connect directly to, and then they want to synchronize that with an Oracle database. So some other newer front end, whatever, could connect to it. That kind of leads back to my original question about two-way synchronization. Would there just be then two setups? I mean, if somebody's working on the Oracle database and they make a change and they wanted that reflected back in that older database, would there be like two different connectors or two different, not connectors, I'm sorry, but two different synchronizations taking place?
Or
would it be read only?
We don't suggest to do that because actually the things will be like that. People will do the new things in the new database, and they do not insert or feedback the data back to the old database. So it is a one-way synchronization. They only want the old data to the new database. And if you have a two-way synchronization, I think that will confuse the system, because I don't know, the system will not know this new record is from the old database or from the new database. I think it's not. I didn't met that kind of scenario before.
Okay,
so I guess think a one-way synchronization is good.
Okay, I'm glad we talked about it, because that was my original question. I mean, and if it did two-way, how would it handle conflicts? Because I see a whole bunch of problems that could happen there. But I also, I mean, again, in my use case, the two-way synchronization would have been great, because when we developed programs or interfaces, we did not want to hook to that old archaic database directly, because nobody who was alive even knew how to program it. But also we needed to get data back and forth from it. So it was tough.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Or it's a very good requirement. We can consider it in the later time. And now I think there may be a solution that you will have a third data source like a Kafka, and this two database can do the two-way synchronization between Kafka and the two different databases. So I think perhaps that's a solution for your question. But I think there will be some solution for the requirement that you mentioned.
And for what it's worth,
figure it out.
For what it's worth, I'm not going back to that job, so I don't really need a solution. 10 years ago, Sean needed a solution, and I left the job. So
yeah, it's a very interesting question.
So I'm wondering, again, as an outsider to this, a couple of things. One is there's the connector API, and that is somewhere. And somebody using this synchronized database, like a master database, must call it something. Do they call it? I mean, is it known as the SeaTunnel database? They call it. I've got a SeaTunnel here. We've got all these databases, and I'm using my SeaTunnel. Is that how? Is that how a company or a user or a customer? I don't really have customers, I suppose, but somebody, some company using SeaTunnel. What do they call that? And where does it live? I mean, it may live in a cloud off somewhere. I'm not sure.
Actually, many companies use SeaTunnel. I think in American there's a bank called Goldman Sachs, I think, or another investment bank, and they use SeaTunnel to extract data from AWS Aurora to AWS Redshift, and many other companies such as Bilibili. That's a video company just like YouTube. And also we have VIP.com. That's a company just like Amazon, but it's a smaller one. So they just synchronize data from different databases. And now I think there's some user in you can see there's many company. I think there are internet companies. That's a JP Morgan. Sorry, it's not a Goldman Sachs. It's a JP Morgan.
Good.
And many internet company such like ByteDance. That's a TikTok. So and also there's many other company, both in Japan, in China, in Singapore, and also some users in American. So I think most of them are internet company because they use cloud, and cloud. There's many new cloud database, and there's no very good open source project for the cloud database in synchronization. So they are using SeaTunnel to solve that kind of things. And I know there's many old software such as Talent and Informatica, which is in North American and in Europe. But this kind of tools will not support a cloud database very well. So that's why there's many internet company use SeaTunnel. And also because SeaTunnel is open source, it's free, I think.
Yeah. In some ways, that makes it harder to track, I suppose. Somebody could be using it and, they're not paying customers that are not necessarily in your base. But I mentioned they might have developers on the case. I know Sean has a question, but we need to take a break and we'll be back right after this.
Okay. So again, I just have so many questions and I didn't think I was going to, but I really enjoyed the conversation here. So let's say I'm using SeaTunnel and I assume I could run like SeaTunnel like in a Docker container or something. I assume it's just an engine that's running and then it talks to the different, data sources and syncs. Is it an all or nothing? Like if I have a database, do I have to then keep the entire database in sync across the connector? Can I do piecemeal? Like, can I say, only this part of the database I want synced with, this sync over here. Like I want my contact database kept in sync with my Notion address book or whatever, and just have that stay in sync. And if so, I assume yes. I mean, it would be silly if I could only do the entire database, but what triggers the sync? Is this something that, does SeaTunnel stay connected to the data source watching for a change, or is there something that has to trigger SeaTunnel? Do you send data to it? How does that connection actually happen?
Yeah, very good question. There's two ways. One way we call the batch job. That means you have to trigger the SeaTunnel to extract data from database and load into the other database. And you can use Airflow or Dolphin Scheduler to trigger that batch job. So we call that's a job orchestration tools. So there's another. You can use another orchestration tool such as Airflow or Dolphin Scheduler to trigger that. And or if you have a real-time job, we call it real-time data synchronization, and then the SeaTunnel will watch the original database. If you have some new records or you change some data records, the SeaTunnel will know that and will synchronize the data into your database in no more than 1 second. So there's two walkways for SeaTunnel. So I think that's for your question. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a downside to having SeaTunnel, to take out that extra tool like, the Dolphin Scheduler or Airflow? Is there a downside to having SeaTunnel monitor directly itself for that real-time change? I mean, is that a performant hit on the source database? Or is it just if you're already using something like Dolphin Scheduler to do these, these batch changes, you just want to do that? Is there a best practice, or is it all just dependent on what kind of data you're working with?
Yeah. If you don't want to do the real time, if you don't want to get the real time data, you needn't to use a real time mode, because I think for the real time mode, it will affect some regional database performance, but it's very tiny because we do not read the database. We read the database bin log. Bin log means that's a file that is not a database. So we read the bin log or we read the redo log. So that will affect some disk I/O, but I think it's not will affect the database performance very much. So, so
it doesn't actually
have
it doesn't connect to the database unless it detects something that it would want from the logs. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then, I mean, I guess with something like Dolphin Scheduler, there would be no connection at all. And then would Dolphin actually pass the data, or would it just trigger SeaTunnel to then come in and grab the data?
Yeah, Dolphin Scheduler is just the orchestration tools. Is just to trigger the SeaTunnel, and also it can trigger Spark or Have or other or EMR on AWS. It's orchestration tools. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess I see why you could do it two different ways, and probably the performance isn't drastically better one way or the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have a lot of data, you have to extract the data in batch mode because the data is too big.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If your
too.
data is not so big, you can do it in real time mode.
Yeah. If you're watching one field, you wouldn't have to do like a batch for, one name changed. Yeah, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions in the back channel. After somebody says they want to do work only with cool sounding names, and SeaTunnel's on that list. Is there a chance for errors with a sync that fast? And did they already talk rollback of transactions? Especially if someone has some files open at the time the sync happens. So can you address those?
Yeah. It is also a very good question. Actually, SeaTunnel can deploy on one server or in the cluster mode, and we have a global snapshot technique. That means if some error happened and the whole data synchronization process will roll back to the last global snapshot. We call it a checkpoint. So if some error happens, so we will roll back to the last checkpoint. So you needn't to worry about you will lose some data, because we will have many checkpoints when you do the synchronization. And you can define the checkpoint by yourself. For example, you can define 30 seconds you make one checkpoint, or you can define 100 records, then you make a checkpoint. So the data will not be missed between database synchronization, because we have we call it distributed checkpoint, and we have a rollback engine, a rollback function to assure that data will not be lost. Yeah. So this is a very good question. And also we have some other functions to assure that the data will read the data again, and to synchronize from the last checkpoint to the future data synchronization. So SeaTunnel will assure that the data will synchronize from the source to the target exactly once. We call it exactly once. It will not be doubled your data, or your data will be not lost.
Unless you're Sean and you're trying to sync data two ways at the same time, in which case all bets are off.
Yeah.
So I have a question. There was a piece written by somebody with the Dolphin, the Apache Dolphin Scheduler, that has a very provocative headline: "Train your own private ChatGPT model for the cost of a Starbucks coffee." And I'll read the paragraph that opens that. You can own your own trained open source large scale model. It can be fine tuned according to different training data directions to enhance various skills such as medical programming, stock trading, love advice, making your large scale model more understanding of you. Let's try training. And then it goes into how you can do that. And I have a particular question about that because I want my own, chatbot on my own data in my house, in my household, all my property, all my health records, all my financial records, all my contacts and calendars, my travels, where I've been, like where was I when I had that medical thing that happened? And what doctors did I see about that? I mean, I'm just making that up, but those are the kind of things I think when the likes of ChatGPT become relevant to individuals I think we're sort of at a moment now where we will start having our own databases in our house, in our homes that are not relevant to the world. And we think about these easily for companies because companies have gigantic databases in most cases and wish to know a lot about themselves, and it would apply there. And that's probably where most of the uses are going to be early on. But I was thinking we had a company on here a few weeks ago talking about control planes. It was called cross-plane, and it was about doing, you have multiple control planes within a company. And we have control planes in our own lives. And I'm thinking, this seems relevant to me, especially when they're saying it's cheap. So you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Actually, we call the private LLM because what you need is only a GPU better than 3090. Then you can use Dolphin Scheduler to train your own ChatGPT with that GPU. I think it's about 24 hours. You can train your own ChatGPT. But what you need to do is to prepare the data and to let the open source large model, for example, Llama or Llama 2, and Dolphin Scheduler will download the Llama or Llama 2 automatically, and it will help you to train with your personal data in your own personal computer or personal laptop or desktop to train your own ChatGPT, and you can just to use Dolphin Scheduler to train the whole private model, and you can use the private model at your home. You needn't to worry about the data leak or your personal data will upload to somewhere else, because it's training. You can training the data. You can train your data in your own laptop. So this is a very interesting one.
This is something I very much want. We at the distributed webcamp a few weeks ago, and I mentioned this on earlier shows, but it's worth bringing up again. One of the hackers among us took everything I'd written for Linux Journal, where Sean and I both used to work for. Over 24 years, I wrote many, many articles, and had it query those. In other words, it trained on those. I don't know what model he used, whether it was Llama or ChatGPT, but there was one, and it gave good answers, and it put them in the form of a haiku as well. It gave you like the complete answer and then this haiku, and was remarkably right and helpful. And that was just one thing. I mean, one could actually look back through all of one's emails, and how many times did I talk to Sean? When did this come up? I mean, I'd love to have it for. We've done this show for 16 years. It'd be really great to go back and say, hey, when did we last talk to William? When did we last talk to so-and-so? Who would we want to have back? And, what questions were left unanswered? I mean, there are lots of possibilities there. And until, I started learning about this, I wasn't thinking about how possible this was at a relatively low cost. So that's intriguing.
Yeah. Actually, I think Dolphin Scheduler can let almost everyone can have their private ChatGPT. But I think the hard part is to prepare the data. I think the data preparation is hard. So some people are doing are creating a connector in SeaTunnel for the preparing data. For example, you can extract data from your PowerPoint or from your Word, and then to do the data preparation for the llama. And then you can training the llama with a dolphin scheduler, and then you can have your own private ChatGPT. But I think it's hard. But if he succeeds, I think everyone will be happy because everyone can do the data preparation very easily. But for now, they're doing that kind of project, doing that connectors, I think.
We're getting down toward the end of our hour, and there are so many. I mean, I took so many notes and prep for this thing, but probably there are two questions we tend to end with. One is, are there any questions we haven't asked so far that you really like us to have answered, to ask you, so we can cover that before we come out?
I think I don't know. People, there's a question for the PMCs. I don't know. People like to use code, SQL-like code, to do the data synchronization, or they want to use a UI, just like a drag and a drop to the synchronization. So that's a question for the audience. Actually, I think if they have the answers, they can tell me.
Well, we have 12,000 of those or so. So maybe one of them will. One last one, which actually Jonathan Bennett, another co-host who we mentioned earlier here and who has been on our chat, often brings up, which is, what is the weirdest use you've seen so far? What's really unusual or stands out as an exception?
Actually, I think the most weird thing I met in this project is I think the connectors will be growing slowly. Actually, I think because when we entered the Apache incubator, we only have 20 connectors actually, and we just double that connectors in 1 year, from 20 to 40 in our company. But actually, now it has more than 100 connectors, and I think the power of open source community is more powerful than I think. And so I think it's interesting, because I never think that the connectors will grow so much, and I never thought will be so many users who can contribute their connectors to these open source projects. I think so. I think the little word for me. Yeah.
Well, that's great, and given that it's growing that fast, and given that we will have SeaTunnel running in a year or two, or less, maybe, if we follow that path, we'll be able to see how far it's gone and have you back on a future show. That'll be great.
Yeah. So our goal is connect every data source in the world. So I think will be.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Get them all. Thanks so much, William, for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will have to have you back.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Sean.
I surprised myself with how many questions I had and how much I wished that I had met William 10 years ago.
Yeah, I know. And I didn't know that Ant was was producing the show, was also involved in that. Was actually glad to get away from databases at some point.
Yeah, you can tell he worked in databases because he's generally angry. No, just kidding.
That was a great conversation, but I got to tell you, I was sweating a little bit over here. PTSD. Oh boy,
me too.
The memories.
I expect to have nightmares about databases tonight when I drift off to sleep. But I'm still fascinating though. Big data is not going anywhere, right? I mean, our whole world is data. So the idea of being able to connect different data sources, especially crazy, wacky ones, and it sounds like the number of connectors is just, off the charts. It is exciting. It's surprising that I'm this interested and excited about database connections, right? I mean, on the tin, that doesn't sound like an exciting podcast topic, but it's pretty cool when you think about what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Well, it's I found it quite exciting, and of course I don't have any PTSD from dealing with databases, other than my own. I mean,
you didn't spend the whole weekend worrying about ODBC and JDBC and just every daggum Saturday that you're having a great time, and all of a sudden something just crashes and you get that phone call, and you didn't have that problem, Doc? Never?
No, I didn't. My problem has always been I have too many drives laying around that have my photography on them. And so that's why I now have this 8 terabyte laptop that's filled completely. But I don't see that as a database. So it is, in a way. I mean, I just know it's a directory I have to navigate. It's a different thing.
If you write a connector, you could put that into any sort of database you want. Because I know a tool.
I could.
It's SeaTunnel. No, it's not SeaTunnel.
I mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, we're never going to get rid of databases. After all, we are digital animals now, and our corporations are digital, our governments are digital, all of it's digital. So
now, don't get me wrong. I'm totally for databases and the advantages that they bring to day-to-day life, especially you talking about being able to build a large language model and being able to query it just to get stuff that you want.
That's the stuff I want. There. I mean, I'm
all for that. Just, I love data. I just don't miss the management side of it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Same. And that was the thing. I wasn't the database person. I was the manager. So not only did when things went wrong, I had to fix it, but I also wasn't the person who could fix it. So yeah, it's stressful. Databases can be stressful.
On another podcast I was listening to, because that's all you listen to now is podcasts. The host there said, I forget who it was, they were talking about a chief digital officer, like some companies have a chief digital officer. And this guy said, well, isn't that like having a chief electricity officer now? Because it's all digital. There's no other kind of thing. So, I want to plug next week. We have Damian Reel on, spelled RIEHL. He is this really smart lawyer, open source friendly. He's big in the music business. He's on I saw what he wrote. It was really interesting stuff. And I dragged him onto a list I'm on, where he is just killing it. He's really smart. And Catherine, who will be the co-host, and I have had him on also on our own little podcast. So he's a good guy. He's going to be up next week. Catherine's going to co-host, so I want to plug that. I want to ask legal questions, all kinds of topics. He's your guy. He's a good guy. So what do you got to plug there, Sean?
Just not anything special on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sean Powers with a 0. There it is.
Yeah. So are you still doing the cartoon? And we got the book out.
I haven't had a chance to, and it still bums me out. I still can't seem to get enough hours in a day since I had COVID. I don't think I have long COVID, but for some reason I just cannot get I need more sleep now. And that time that I spend sleeping is when I used to draw my comic every morning. So maybe someday it'll happen. I hope so, but I haven't drawn my comic in a while.
I had the lamest COVID anybody had, which is I had sniffles. I asked my daughter if she had a test. I tested positive. She banished me to the basement, but I had no other symptoms. That was the end of it.
Wow.
Nothing happened.
I'm jealous.
I know there's so many bad stories, but mine wasn't one of them. Anyhow, so again, next week, see you next week with Damian Reel. I'm Doc Searles. This is Floss Weekly. We'll see you then.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space books and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.